Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon. We have 14 employees, over 650 titles in print with 20 to 40 new books per year, and we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or maybe you just want to understand the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to talk about a little bit in the in the world of publishing news, which is, I guess it's like not necessarily news, but more like publishing revelations. Notably, in the scientific study performed by Dr. Kathi Berens and Dr. Rachel Noorda about the state of consumption in publishing and media.
And by consumption, I believe you mean reading.
Yes.
Or book engagement is what their term.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Engagement is their word for consumption. Yes. Mm-hmm. They're not eating the books. They're reading the books.
Getting engaged to the books.
Well, who can really? What people do private is their own business. Mm-hmm. But don't eat the books. And popular wisdom in publishing always pushed this idea that the boomer woman, so, now women over 60, women over 70 are the primary consumers of books.
And the assumption there is white women.
Yes, I'm sorry. I missed one adjective in that sentence. And so, and that never resonated with me. It didn't seem accurate to me, and it seemed like, maybe at one time that was true, but it also just seemed like that wasn't a product naturally of like what people were publishing, and that was the intended audience they were publishing for. So like it was sort of a, like which is the egg and which is the chicken sort of situation of like they weren't the number one consumer of books, they were the number one audience being catered to. And so the fascinating thing is in the study, they found out that actually it is millennial Black women, and to a lesser degree, Chicana women, who are the actual number one consumers of books, which are is much more consistent with who we see reading and buying our books. So that actually makes a lot more sense.
But it's also kind of a weird situation because most publishers are still aiming right at those older white women.
But that's just their comfort zone, That's a weird thing of it all.
Well, there's a glut in the market for one demographic, and not so much for another.
Right, yeah. And, and again, it's right. It's which is, brought about the whole, we need diverse books movement and the whole own voices movement. And, much of the past year was a product of people being come on. It's well past time.
Yeah, no, a lot of younger, smaller publishers are totally knocking it out of the park also, and have been for a long time. This isn't a new revelation for everybody.
And like we've been saying for years on the pod, it's literally why there's so much room for independent publishers. It's why there's so much room to mid-list publishers can come in with these things because, the big houses don't do them well or don't know how to do them, or it's uncomfortable subject matter, I guess. I don't entirely understand, and so what they do is they'll bring in a young editor, to do a diverse line, and but these things tend to have a lot of immediate fanfare and then to fizzle fast, so it's not quite what is promised, and it just seems like they're not really planned for the long haul to me.
I know. Well, I mean, yeah.
But so
it's the decision makers don't get it up at the top.
So the doctors, as we will collectively call them, Rachel and Kathi, they studied a greater range of criteria. So age of people that read books, where people live that read the books, what part of the country, gender, ethnicity, and they used a sample size that matches the U.S. population, so they could assume that it was more reflective of the country as a whole. And, they did thousands of people. It wasn't one of the, so which is enough of a sample size to, have pretty good accuracy. so they're looking at engagement, and on average, Black and Latina women, millennials, mind you, young people, so late 20s, early 30s, are reading 4 times actually what the average person reads, so which is takes it from 1 book a month to 4 books a month, or 48 books a year.
And they're also more likely to be reading paper books.
Yeah.
Like, they read the same number of ebooks as boomers, but they read more paper books.
And and that was kind of the weird thing that people have fought me on for years as well, is that boomers tend to be one of the audiences that likes ebooks.
But they also have this idea that young people don't read paper books anymore.
Right. In reality, it's sort of the other way around. But yeah, so that is sort of a fascinating thing. And then you have the other major revelation is that people that heavily consume one kind of media tend to heavily consume all kinds of media. So it's people that watch a lot of TV also read a lot of books, which was kind of a fascinating thing. And and again, people have theorized that before, but this is scientific data that sort of supports that idea. And, which I thought was really interesting. And then also completely fascinating as a publisher, people severely distrust the algorithm as a recommendation. Mm-hmm. But they also curiously distrust salespeople, bookstore employees even. People who know books like the back of their hand, because they see it as this person has a vested interest in me buying something. So what they do, and this is kind of when you think of buzz, what's actually happening is it's in-network referrals. Yeah. That sounds like I'm talking about a doctor's office, but it's when your sister-in-law or friend or friend's friend or recommends a book to you, people tend to statistically take that at the highest weight. So they're oh, so-and-so loved this book. So even if the book is not right for you whatsoever, it means so much to people that someone they know recommended the book to them over almost anything else, which I find completely fascinating.
I also saw that the second most common way people get books, get book suggestions that they take is same author.
Yeah, author brand. Mm-hmm.
Author brand.
Which is, both of these are pretty heavily covered in the People's Guide to Publishing book. And I tried to extol the virtues of how you could operate on publisher brand. But yeah, I mean, and that
was a very small portion of how people got their book recommendations was publisher brand. They even smaller than the algorithm and the bookseller recommendations.
The world has moved into that with the embrace of series, but the world has not yet been ready to embrace the concept of publisher brand.
I think we can still call publisher brand an out-of-network referral, and that makes your book insurance go up.
Yikes. But and then genre, so people that, if you only read werewolf, queer porn, we have one book for you, and you're probably going to read every book in that genre. If you read science fiction, finding new science fiction books and authors, and then using author brand as your spider web is going to be your mechanism, is the third highest form of referral to new books. And then lastly, as Ellie mentioned, price is not nearly as important as the above 3, Right. So you're really more concerned with my mom loves this book than you are, it's $29.
It's people are seeing the value of books again, despite Amazon's best efforts.
And this is something that we've heard from numerous stores is, rather than someone coming in and asking for a used paperback of a brand new hardcover title, they say, oh, cool. $28, no big deal. I'll take 4, And that's just kind of the way of the modern world is people recognize the value and what it costs to make a book. I guess it's sort of the pushback against years and years of Amazon prioritizing price above all else is the distrust of the algorithm and just not embracing price as a primary factor.
And wanting authors to get paid.
Yeah, I guess that's true. If author is a primary matter of how you choose which books, you do care about that. And that's a fascinating thing on Reading Glasses podcast, shout out. They have so many reader questions that are I obtained the book through this mechanism. which I know makes no money for the author. How can I support the author?
Oh, yeah, and that was actually one of the super fascinating things about the survey is they interviewed people about piracy and their habits of, like, stealing books. And they found that, like, most people that do, like, illegally download books without paying for them also buy books. Like, they're not just people that are like, I want everything for free.
Yeah, and it seemed, obviously, like, it's not, you wouldn't have a very, very clear picture of this, but it also seemed like if they could get it from the library, they would get it from the library. If they could get it from a store, they would get it from a store. If they couldn't get it through other means, piracy became their best means. And that is consistent with, like, some of the case studies that I wrote in the book, too, where, like, people would aggressively try to bootleg something if it was underprinted or if it was otherwise unavailable, because they want to read the book. I mean, that's why anybody reads a book. So in short, it's a fascinating study, and you could Google it and check it out and, take a look at that and see if that, if you can find other things that fascinate you as well.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
on Twitter at Microcosm,
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
on Instagram at Microcosm_pub,
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.